Okay, so this is the first of our tutorials for cellular biology. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through our little textbook that we got from the library and go through all of the kind of main points of cellular biology so that you guys are pretty set for the exam. So you can't see me, you can just see my hands, but I'm just going to be drawing on this piece of paper here because as you know I'm quite visual. So yeah, hopefully it'll make it a little bit easier for you guys. So we're just going to start with cells. So what are cells? Okay, so cells are basically the building blocks of life. Okay, so all living things have cells. So plants, animals, fungi, bacteria, all living things. Okay, and these cells, so we've basically got our cells. Each of these cells have a number of different things on the inside, so we'll go through what exactly those things are later on. But basically, these cells kind of allow things to live. So they were first observed by a guy called Robert Hooke, and he basically had a look down a microscope at some cork, which is a type of plant material, and he saw these little kind of sectioned off little bits, and he thought they looked kind of like cells. So cells like in a prison sense, so little blocks next to each other. So that's why they're called cells, because they look kind of like prison cells, little separate areas separated from each other. Now cells so we can kind of define organisms in two different ways. So they can either be prokaryotic or eukaryotic. Okay, so basically prokaryotic, if we take this word apart, pro means before and karyotic, nucleus. Okay, eukaryotic, eukaryotic means true, and karyotic means nucleus. Okay, so we've got two different types of living things. We've got things prokaryotic, so these are the things that don't have a nucleus. So if we think about some of the things that we know that are prokaryotic, you guys will probably know these very well, things like bacteria. Okay, eukaryotic is everything, so that's things like us, trees, you know, bunny rabbits, whatever. Okay, so eukaryotic things have a nucleus. And what do I mean by nucleus? Well, if we look at our cell, so here is a cell. Okay, so we've got the membrane around the cell. The nucleus is the bit in the middle, and it normally is the thing that's kind of stained a little bit darker than the rest of it. So that's because scientists use a particular stain to stain cells so that we can see it better. And a lot of the time that stain will stick quite strongly to the membrane and to the nucleus, so it's quite easy to see under a light microscope. So if we just label that nucleus. Alright, so that is a eukaryotic cell. If we look at the bacterial cell, what you'll find is you'll find your bacteria, and its DNA is just kind of floating around in the middle of the cell. So that's how we tell which is which. Alright, so basically what I'm going to go over, we're going to kind of leave prokaryotes for a little bit. I'm going to go straight to eukaryotes. So when we talk about eukaryotes get a little bit more complex. Okay, so bacteria are quite simple. So I'm going to go further into the eukaryotic stuff. So if we look, hopefully we've got some more space here. Okay, so eukaryotic cells, basically, so eukaryotic cells, so let's, if we just draw one here. Okay, so eukaryotic cells, we know that it has a nucleus. Okay, so that's where all the DNA is stored. So if we just label that DNA. Okay, so eukaryotic cells, because most eukaryotics are multicellular, meaning that they have more than one cell, multi, as opposed to unicellular, which means one cell. So that's things like bacteria. Okay, so because eukaryotes are generally multicellular, all the different cells in their body aren't really the same, are they? So you've got things like skin cells, hair cells, muscle cells, you got, you know, leaf cells, stem cells. Okay, so you've got all these different types of cells. So all these different types of cells, to work properly, they've all got the same DNA, but what happens is that DNA, oh, can you see that? They've all got the same DNA, but what happens is different parts of that DNA is expressed at different times. So if different parts of the DNA are expressed at different times, so different genes, say it's a hair cell, so the hair cell needs to be able to produce keratin, which is what makes up your hair. So those cells are really active in the hair follicle cells. So what else do the different cells need? Okay, so they tend to look different depending on their role, and they tend to have different stuff on the inside. Okay, so you know, if they have high energy requirements or something, they'll have a lot more of the organelles that are responsible for producing energy. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, so basically there's different sizes, different shapes, different structures within the different cells. So if we just look at quickly a basic, so if we'll just kind of turn this over. Okay, so we'll look at a plant versus an animal cell. Alright, so both plants and animals are eukaryotic, so they both have a true nucleus. Okay, so we tend to draw animal cells as kind of circular, and sometimes they've got a bit of a squiggly kind of outside. Plant cells are different. We tend to draw them as kind of like a box. Okay, we draw them as a box because they've got this extra thing called a cell wall that kind of protects the cell, and it allows it to kind of stay with its rigid shape. So if we just label this thing here, I'll get a different color. Okay, so on the outside of all animal cells, we've got our cell membrane. Okay, on the plant cell, we've also got a cell membrane, so that's sitting inside of the cell wall. Okay, and they are the same as the animal cells. Okay, so if I just quickly label, so this thing here that I'm colouring in now, that is the cell wall. Now, cell wall tends to be made up of cellulose. So cellulose is kind of quite a tough material, and humans can't actually digest cellulose. We use bacteria in our guts to digest the cellulose, so it's quite hard to digest actually. Okay, so we've got our cell membrane. Both of these have a cell membrane. So this is our animal cell and our plant cell. Now, because we know that it's a eukaryote, we know that both of them are going to have a true nucleus. Okay, so I'm going to draw that in there. So both of them will have a nucleus. So we can label that nucleus. Okay, and we'll label that one there, a nucleus as well. Okay, so we remember that the nucleus is where all the DNA is stored. Okay, and the cell wall is here for protection. So I haven't talked about cell membrane yet. So cell membrane is the thing that allows the entry and exit of particles. So if you've got particles, say water particles, gas particles, okay, it's the membrane that's going to let these things in and out. Okay, so that's something that we call selectively permeable. I'll write that down here. Okay, so that's selectively permeable. So what do we mean by that? Selectively means that it chooses what goes in and out. It's selective. Okay, and permeable means that, so if something's fully permeable, things can go in and out of it all the time. So permeable just means that, you know, it's molecules can travel through it. Okay, cool. So we've got our cell membrane, we've got our nucleus, and we've got our cell wall. Okay, so another kind of really basic thing that I'm going to add to this is what's on the inside. Okay, it can't be nothing. Okay, it's not going to be air, because if it was air, then we'd just float up. Alright, we've got so many cells in our bodies that if all of our cells were filled with air, then we wouldn't stay on the ground, we'd just float back up again. So the stuff that's inside of the cell, we call this cytoplasm. Oh, I'll label it in the right color. Cytoplasm. Okay, and so that's the same in both animals and in plants. Okay, so the cytoplasm, that's the jelly-like structure. You can kind of think of it as jelly inside. Jelly. You can see that. Okay, so it's a jelly-like structure, and that's the stuff that where a lot of the reactions happen within the cell. Okay, so yeah, cytoplasm is really important, so we'll come across that a little bit later. Alright, so what's another thing that is important to know about animal and plant cells? Okay, so plant cells have this extra thing, so they've got the cell wall, which animal cells don't, but they've got something else, and that's called a vacuole. Now, vacuole is basically just a big air bubble. It's called a vacuole. So that's just basically a big air bubble inside of the plant cell, and that just kind of gives it a little bit more structure. So you'll find, I mean, plant cells have a lot more structures. So they've got their cell wall there for protection, and they've also got this vacuole in the middle, which kind of allows it to kind of maintain its rigidity, and it also kind of there's some things that could be stored in the vacuole, but it's basically just to kind of allow for rigidity in the plant cell. Okay, so there's one more thing that plant cells have that animal cells don't. Animal cells are looking a bit boring at the moment, to be honest, but that's alright. We'll add some more stuff in those plant cells soon. So basically, plant cell has the vacuole, they have the cell wall that's different, and they got one more thing that's different, and that's what we call chloroplasts. So chloroplasts are these little things. There's normally quite a few of them in the cell, and they are there. Chloroplast. Spelling. Okay, so chloroplasts. They are the things that photosynthesize. Okay, so let's do a little quick thing on photosynthesis. Alright, so if we bring this down here, we're going to go over photosynthesis a little bit more. So if we just write here photosynthesis. Okay, so photosynthesis, basically you take the sun. Okay, sun rays come down, they hit the plant. Okay, so here's my little plant. Here's my tree. Okay, it hits the tree, and what the tree does is it uses it uses carbon dioxide from the air, nutrients from the soil, into the tree. Okay, so a little bit of water, normally from the soil as well. Okay, and then it takes all of that and it converts it into cellular energy. And the way that they do that, so basically, photosynthesis will convert it into glucose or starch, some kind of sugar. Okay, and then that sugar is used to produce cellular energy through the process of respiration. Sorry, that was a bit confusing. So let's go over that again. Sun comes down onto the plant, uses carbon dioxide from the air, water from the soil, nutrients from the soil, and what it does is it turns all of that into sugar. Okay, and then just like what we do, the sugar is turned into cellular energy, which is the type of energy that cells can use. Okay, so oh god, you couldn't even see that for the whole time. Okay, sun comes down, plant, CO2, H2O, nutrients, turns it into sugar. Then that sugar, through respiration, is turned into cellular energy, and we call that ATP. Alright, so it's a basic rundown of plant versus animal cells. Okay, so I'm just going to go through some of the little organelles, and then we'll stop, I think, and I'll move on to the next topic. Alrighty, so I'll probably use the back of this, don't I? Oh, cool. Alright, let's have a look. I'll just draw an animal cell. Okay, so here's a big cell. I don't know if you can see that or not. Let's just do that. Alright, so what do we know so far? We know that all eukaryotic cells, including animals, have a cell nucleus. We know that this little thing here is our cell membrane. Okay, so that's all we've kind of got up to for for our animal cells. Okay, but there's a lot more things inside of the animal cells and also inside of the plant cells. But I'm just going to give you an idea of what's inside of the animal cell, and hopefully that'll make it a bit clearer as well for the plant cell. Okay, so animal cells. Okay, so first thing that I'm going to add in here are some things called mitochondria. Okay, so most cells have quite a few different mitochondria. Okay, so I'm going to label that over here, mitochondria. Okay, and that's the thing that creates ATP. So that's, in other words, cellular energy. Okay, so that's where respiration occurs. And I'll talk to you about that later. So all you need to know for now is that mitochondria are found in both animal and plant cells. And here I'm drawing in some little twirly lines. So that's basically kind of a really brief representation of what a mitochondria looks like. It's actually, I'll go into the structure a little bit more in respiration. But basically, you've got your mitochondria, and they're the kind of powerhouses of the cell. They produce cellular energy. Okay, so what else have we got in a animal cell? We've got our cytoplasm that I forgot to put in. Okay, so we've got our cytoplasm. Alright, what else have we got? We've got these little things. I'm just going to put some dots all around here. Okay, so we've got these little things. They're called ribosomes. Now, ribosomes, we're going to be learning about them in gene expression. Ribosomes, basically, what they do is they take DNA. Well, DNA comes out of the nucleus, basically. So you've got your genes, and you want your genes to be expressed. So you can't just have your DNA just chilling in there. There needs to be some kind of proteins being made from the DNA. So, you know, yeah, so for example, if you have the gene for black hair, so your DNA comes out of the nucleus, so you need to start producing some black hair, because that's what your DNA says. Okay, so basically the ribosomes are like the little mini factories inside of the cell. Okay, and these factories produce proteins, okay, for the cell to be able to survive or for export to some other places and things. So ribosomes are really important. Okay, ribosomes also are found on this thing. So there's these kind of like little membrane things that are next to the nucleus. And this thing is called the endoplasmic reticulum. So endoplasmic reticulum, there's two types. Okay, first type is quite close to the nucleus, and that's dotted with a whole bunch of different ribosomes. Okay, and because it's got all those ribosomes on it, we know that it's probably producing lots of proteins. We call that one the rough, or the rough endoplasmic reticulum, and it's called rough because it's got these little ribosomes on it. Okay, then the next bit is the smooth ER. Okay, and the smooth ER is basically a place where a lot of the proteins that are produced in the rough ER go and they get modified. So yeah, the ER is quite important for protein making, and also the production of lipids. So smooth ER is also involved in production of lipids. So we know lipids are fats. Okay, what else have we got here? So we've got this thing called, I'll draw it here. Okay, we've got this other thing, and I'm going to call this the Golgi body. Golgi. Okay, and so you probably only have about one of these in each cell. And it looks quite similar to this ER guy because it's a whole bunch of different membrane sacs, and we call those cristinae. So that's the same as what you find in mitochondria and these ones here. So basically what the Golgi body does is a whole bunch of proteins and fats and things are produced in the ER, and then what happens is they're kind of transported over to the Golgi body. So the Golgi body, basically the proteins kind of jump in little vesicles, across the membranes, and while they jump across the membranes, they are kind of slowly modified. Okay, so this is where they kind of this is kind of the final process of the protein. So they're modified, they're kind of packaged properly, and then the proteins are sent to the membrane, and basically they just pop out of the membrane and go to wherever they're needed, or they'll stay in the cell if they're needed in the cell, but normally they're just kind of popped out. Okay, so what else have we got? We got these little things, little kind of circular guys just floating around. These things are called lysosomes, and these are little vacuoles, and inside of them there's a whole bunch of digestive enzymes. So those enzymes basically, if you've got something in the cell that it doesn't want anymore, if say like one of the organelles is damaged, or it's old, or you know, like something happens, basically the lysosome will come pick it up. It'll digest it with inside. It's basically kind of like the rubbish dump. It'll digest the stuff inside and then release it kind of out of the cell. So this thing is really important, and you've got quite a few of them in your cell. It's really important that they don't leak, because otherwise it would kill the cell. So they've got a little membrane around them that stops it from leaking, and they kind of, yeah, they're the rubbish collectors of the cell. What else have we got? Talked about mitochondria, Golgi body, cell nucleus, cytoplasm. Yeah, so that's pretty much basically it. The only other thing that is different is those things that are different inside of the plant cell, but I've already kind of covered all of that. Yeah, that's most of it, most of everything that you need to know about kind of the structure of the plant cells and animal cells. So different cells, obviously different specialized cells will have different amounts of all these organelles. Okay, so if it's a cell that's constantly producing proteins, you'll find probably it has quite an extensive ER and Golgi body and things like that. So yeah, cool. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there, and we can go back through some of the kind of cell processes soon. Okay.